So Tanner Ward is, to this day, it's unknown whether it was a self-unaliving or something more. Now, I just think the facts of the case are so many unanswered questions, and I just can't answer those questions in a logical way. And because I can't answer them in a logical way, and I haven't seen them answered online, all I see online is posts like people saying, I've got this question, I've got this question. He's a 19-year-old boy from Trenton in Missouri in America, and we're going to talk about exactly who he was, what part of his life he was at when it happened, and kind of what was going on. Then we'll talk about his actual death and kind of the things that have come out since. So Tanner was 19 at the time when he went missing, and Tanner was somebody who he had been a little bit of a little shit. Thank you, Jazz. Thank you, Glipple. As in his teens from like 15, only like running with local kids and smashing shop windows and kind of doing stuff that like a lot of teenage boys do. But during the time before he went missing, he had really started to sort himself out. He had just had a baby, a little girl called Sophia, and he was engaged to the mother, Megan, and his sister and his mum said, look, it was love at first sight, and it was real love. Like, he would have done anything for Megan, he would have done anything for Sophia. He was making plans to be a father and kind of doing as much as he could to kind of make life work for them. Now, his mum said his name is Tanner Ward. Now, his mum said that she felt like finally with the birth of Sophia that things were going on the right track and her son was going to finally like kind of get on the straight and narrow. Now, Trenton, where he lived in Missouri, was 5,000 in population, and everybody kind of knew each other, knew what everyone was up to. He's a good-looking kid. He was popular at school. He had a lot of friends. Everyone locally kind of knew Tanner. Now, Tanner was born on September the 7th of 1997, and like we said, we'll give you a bit of a backstory of who he was, what he was going through. He had said recently to his mum that Megan and Sophia just made him want to be better. He's very close to his mum, very close to his sisters, and he was looking forward to becoming a husband, even though he was 19. It was very early, but he was looking forward to that. His sister Kelsey Ward, who you will see speak a lot about this case online, she's a massive advocate for her brother, said my brother was a happy person. He loved his baby girl, his girlfriend, and all of us. He was making plans for the future. Okay? So on the night that he disappeared, there was nothing that screamed that anything was going to go wrong. He said on June the 7th of 2017, he was at his family's home. They were all about to sit down for dinner. And then he said to his mum, I've got to quickly nip out with my friend Jeremiah. And I'll only be gone for 30 minutes. I'll be gone for 30 minutes. Now at the time, his mum said, I'm about to plate up dinner. And he said, make me a plate, I'll be 30 minutes. And his mum said to this day, she had never heard the name Jeremiah. Now, they lived in a small town. She knew all of Tanner's friends, all of Kelsey's friends, all of the people locally. She had never heard the name Jeremiah before, but because it was so quick and unexpected, Tanner leaving the house that night, she didn't really think about it. He was like, right, make me a plate, back in 30 minutes, and off he popped, like he just went out, and they were expecting him back. His baby mum and Kelsey's his sister, his baby mum Megan and Sophia were living with his mum at that time, and Kelsey, all in the family home. So he kissed his baby daughter, kissed Megan, and out he walked. Now hours passed and Tanner did not come back home. His dinner sat there untouched His dinner sat there untouched, and this wasn't something that was typical of Tanner. He was normally come back. Now his family started to get a little bit panicked, but they didn't overly react at that time. By the next day, when no one could still reach him, including his fiance, and he hadn't come home, Tanner's sister especially was very overly loud about this isn't right, this isn't okay, we need to find out who Jeremiah is, we need to find out where he went. Now Kelsey also, despite being not very far off Tanner's age, she had never heard of Jeremiah either. And she knew that in a town that small, she would be able to find him quickly. So Kelsey started asking around, trying to figure out who Jeremiah was. And eventually she got an address and went there and knocked on the door. There was no answer. So Kelsey's like, I ain't leaving without my brother. So she goes in. She opens the doorknob. She goes in. And it's unlocked. Now, thinking someone may be asleep, Kelsey goes inside. And she starts looking. And she stops cold at what she sees inside of that house. The apartment was trashed, completely wrecked. Furniture is torn over, like thrown over. There's massive holes in the wall that have been punched into the wall. The back door stood wide open. And this isn't just messy, like a messy apartment. It looks like something violent has happened here. And it looks like a fight has happened in this place. Things were broken, destroyed, not just cluttered. There's like holes in the wall. The furniture looks torn. It looks like something really bad has happened there. Now she's trying to make sense of what's going on. She's calling her brother's name. There's no sign of Tanner or anyone else at that point. Now, early on that same day, the family then call the police. And they say to the police, look, Tanner last went to this boy's house, Jeremiah. I've been to Jeremiah's house. Everything's turned over. There's holes in the wall. And the police say, look, he's a runaway. He'll turn up. Now, his sister then goes back and she's like, this isn't like Tanner. His mum tries to go in. So does Megan. And they're all saying, like, Tanner's missing. We don't know who Jeremiah is. We think he's in trouble. And the police say to Megan, like, he's probably met another girl. Like, he's probably just met another girl. He doesn't want to come home. He's put down as a runaway, although he's 19. He's got nothing to run from. His mum, Lisa Ward, said, I cannot imagine that he walked out of my door on June the 7th and said, I'm just giving up and I'm not doing this anymore. And just walked out of everyone's life. He loved his baby girl. He loved Sophia. And because of Tanner's age and because of his past, the concern didn't land anywhere. And no one seemed to panic. They were like, he's a 19-year-old young lad. And I wonder if it had been the same if he was a girl with a young baby at home. I very much doubt it. Now, meanwhile, days passed with nothing. Nothing. Then weeks. No Tanner, no contact, no explanation. So the family had to start doing their own investigation, as we often see on this channel. They had to start going out. They were putting up posters all over Trenton, in the grocery stores, telephone poles, anywhere that someone might recognise Tanner's face. And that's when Kelsey ran into Jeremiah. It wasn't planned or coordinated. She was putting up posters and Jeremiah came up to her. It was so out of character, Kirsty. He'd never done it before. Kelsey sees him and she recognises him from what other people have said. Like, people have shown her photos and said it's Jeremiah. And when he gets out of his truck and starts walking towards her, she thinks, what the fuck? Why is he wearing my brother's t-shirt? He's wearing the same t-shirt that Tanner went missing in. The very night he disappeared, he had on this expensive shirt that he'd just bought himself. And she notices there's holes in his t-shirt. 4 cigarette burns in the t-shirt. So she says to him straight away, why the hell have you got my brother's t-shirt on? And he goes, well, they're just stains and I just took it from him. And she's like, right, you need to come down to the police station. You need to meet me there right now. I want them to forensically test my brother's t-shirt. And Kelsey's doing it all. And she goes down to the sheriff's office where he meets her, wearing the t-shirt. Now, both of them went to the police station. Kelsey told officers she believed the shirt that Jeremiah was wearing belonged to her brother. And according to Kelsey, Jeremiah was hesitant to hand it over at first. Eventually, the police took it from him. Now, when Trenton police officer Thomas Wright was later asked about whether there was any blood, etc. on the t-shirt, he said there are a couple of anomalies on the t-shirt. I can't say they were blood, but we did ask for them to be tested. Thank you guys for all the gifts. I haven't been able to find any public released statements since then. Thank you, Jan. Thank you, Kirsty. About whether they ever come back with anything on that t-shirt. Thank you, Andrea. Now, police then did a voice stress test on Jeremiah, which is thought to be slightly better than a polygraph, although not 100%. Thank you, Jasper. Thank you, Kirsty. He actually failed that test. He failed on, did he know what happened to Tanner? And did he have anything to do with Tanner's go missing? They're still not admissible in court, so they're not that on point. According to Chief Wright, he said there was levels of deception. He said, was he helpful? He said, I would say the young man tried. However, he was deceptive on several of the questions. Eventually, the police then go out to the property where Jeremiah lives with his father. And it's somewhere where Jeremiah spends most of his time. And cadaver dogs were brought in. Now, cadaver dogs then go and hit on a fire pit in the back garden. Thank you, Lottie. Thank you, everyone, for the gifts. They hit on the fire pit. It's a massive fire pit. And thank you guys so much. Thank you, Lottie. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Kirsty. Thank you, Lloyd. So they dig up this fire pit. They start looking through it for remains. And they go down a whole foot under this fire pit. And they find very small bones in this fire pit. Thank you, Sophie. Thank you, Kirsty. Now, anthropologists later come in and they confirm that these are actual animal bones, chicken bones, not human. And it becomes a dead end. However, the cadaver dogs did hit on it for a scent for Tanner around that fire pit, which I still find really concerning. Now, before getting... so we know at this point that this is a very small town. People start gossiping. I'm going to show you a couple of pictures actually that I got from one of the podcasts that had covered this case. So we have, just while we're halfway through, thank you guys. Thank you, Lottie, so much. So this is Tanner and his daughter in a lot of these pictures, and his sister. So we got Tanner and Megan at the top with Sophia. We've got Tanner here, Tanner with his daughter all over. I mean, he loved this little girl. And then we've got him and his dad, Sophia and Kelsey at the bottom there. Now, Jeremiah is in this next photo lineup with Lisa Ward, his mum. Jeremiah is the two middle pictures there. And then we have some of the area, which we'll get into in a minute, like why that's important. Okay. Now, at this point, his family are doing all they can to get some kind of awareness, and they want to find Tanner, right? It's been weeks. So they end up putting up loads of pictures and posters, and people are taking them down. And this is literally getting awful for them. Now, at this point, local rumours start coming forward to his mum, Lisa, and telling her rumours of what happened to Tanner. Now, these are all along the lines that Tanner had been tortured. He had been hung up in a well or a fruit cellar. He had been kept alive for days. Thank you, Andrea. He had been tortured, kept in the freezer after death. And at some point, he had been beaten to death with a baseball bat. Nothing that the police could prove, nothing that anyone could kind of act upon, because there seemed to be no real evidence at that time. Now, 5 weeks into Tanner's disappearance, a warrant is issued for his arrest, Tanner's arrest, due to a probation violation. Let me open this telephone code quickly. It's a probation violation. And just to say this, the year before, Tanner had pleaded guilty to an unlawful use of a weapons charge and had been placed on probation for 5 years. And that meant he was required to check in with a probation officer. And he missed his check-in, right? So the police up to this point have not wanted to really list him as a high-risk missing person. He's just a missing person runaway. But as soon as he doesn't sign up for his probation, then they're putting out warrants for him. And his family get really upset, and they feel like this is such a disrespect. Like, you'll look for him because you believe that he's wanted, but you won't look for him because he hasn't come home to his daughter and his mum, you know what I mean? So they say it's a non-compliance, which means a violation. And then the police publicly started saying that the reason that Tanner won't come home is because he's hiding from his probation officer. And his mum is like, no, that's not what's happening. Up until this point, he'd signed his probation every time. Hello, everyone coming in. He had no reason to run from his probation. Now, at this point still, there is nothing done. And it's been 6 months at this point since Tanner went missing. Then on a cold December morning, 6 months after Tanner disappeared, everything changed. 2 of Tanner's childhood friends were walking to school when they noticed something hanging from a tree. At first, they didn't immediately recognise what it was. They just kept seeing something blowing in the wind. When they looked up, they realised it was a body. Hanging from the neck from the tree, tangled in the branches above. By the time the authorities arrived, it was clear to see the body was badly decomposed, and identification was not straightforward. The fingers were completely mummified, and the feet were completely missing. There were some pieces of clothing found with him, shoes, pants, sock. The t-shirt was gone. His feet have never been found. An autopsy was ordered and dental records were checked, and it was tragically the body of 19-year-old Tanner. Shortly after that, authorities released their preliminary findings within a week of finding the body, although it took days to identify him, that it was just suicide. Okay, so when I showed you that picture before, let me show you again. This two bottom pictures, obviously his body is blacked out in one. He was found hanging from this tree, that tree limb here. This was his body here, but it's all been blacked out, thankfully. The tree was in one of the most popular walkways from the town, and kids walked that way every day to school, and police expected everyone to believe that he had been hanging there for the full 6 months. He had killed himself, and just no one had ever seen. Thank you, Nina, so much. And no one had ever seen. Now, these kids are saying, nah, I walk past this tree every day, and I knew Tanner was missing. Do you really think I wouldn't have seen a body hanging from a tree? There was no birds flying over, there was no smell, there was no nothing. Now, let's remember that Tanner actually went missing in the summer months. Had he been in that tree, he absolutely would have decomposed, and the smell would have been awful. The smell coming from that tree while he was skeletonizing, mummifying, would have been awful, absolutely awful. Why would only his hands be skeletonized? Mummified. Why would only his hands be mummified? The rest of his body was intact, and he had no feet. They reckon, despite the fact he was high up in a tree, that the animals took his feet. The animals took his whole feet. Would you ever... I thought, according to the pathologist, there was no injuries to the body other than what was consistent with hanging from the neck area. No obvious signs of a struggle. Thank you guys so much. The explanation was that Tanner had hung himself from the tree and his body had fallen onto the branch where it remained for 6 months unidentified. No one saw. No one. Thank you everyone so much. The tree was not in the middle of nowhere, and I want to just thank you, Lottie. This was a tree located in the main strip of the town, where 5,000 people pretty much saw it every single week, if not once a day. Thank you everyone for helping with the gift goal. Thank you. Thank you, Lottie, so much. They literally walked past this tree every day. This is Tanner with his young family. I love this photo. Near the businesses open on that strip are open Monday to Saturday every week. There's a church on that road. There's kids walking to school past it. And apparently his body just hung in the tree like this and nobody saw. No one saw bird activity, insect activity. No one smelt him through the summer months, just nothing. Now, anyone who, obviously, luckily, Jeremiah had his t-shirt. Tanner's found with no t-shirt. Jeremiah's got loads of holes in his house on the day that Tanner goes missing. Furniture overturned, all of those things. A construction worker who had been working just yards from that tree for months come and told Tanner's mum something. He said, "Ma'am, I've been within 10 feet of that tree about 80 times this year. I can assure you your son was not in that tree." The work storage building for that site was only 25 foot from the tree, and the man would have been working in front of that, which means he'd been looking up at that tree most of the day. The proximity is part of what makes the timeline hard for people to reconcile. One of the kids that found Tanner that morning was actually someone who knew him, a childhood friend. He later told Crime Watch Daily that it was windy that day and they heard the tree creaking. That's what made them look up. He said there was no way that once he saw the size of Tanner, and obviously saw what he saw, I don't want to go into too brutal detail there, he wouldn't have missed it. He walked past every single day. Now, what we do know as well, some of the things that I was looking for in the autopsy of this case is there was no elongation of the body. Now, normally if a body's been hung somewhere for six months, you would notice the body starts to stretch, and you get, especially during decomp, you get like the elongation of a body. So it would kind of like be a man who was 6 foot would be almost 8 kind of thing. It kind of stretches out the body. Tanner had none of that. None of it. But despite the fact apparently he'd been decomposing in the tree for 6 months. Nothing. None of those signs. The only thing bizarre was that his body was fine. His hands were mummified, almost as if his hands had been kept in a different kind of climate to the rest of his body, and his feet were completely gone. I wonder if he'd been unalive by... I question as well in this case, like with his body in the state it was in, could you even really tell if he had any marks? Like, once you start mummifying the body and the skin starts coming off, how do you tell there's no bruising? How do you tell 6 months after the fact if he'd been drugged? How do you tell 6 months after the face when the face is mainly skeleton? How do you tell if he'd been hit? You'd only be able to tell broken bones, and if it was like a slow torture process, such as the burning of cigarettes, which may have happened through his t-shirt, and then they kept the t-shirt as some kind of like souvenir, you wouldn't have known. Oh, it would have taken way more than one person to hang him from that tree, yeah. There was no obvious defensive wounds noted, though it's important to say the body was badly decomposed. If there had been injuries, it would have been impossible to identify them at this stage. His fingers were mummified, and there was some confusion around how that happens, especially when it comes to the climate. It is easy to assume that mummification only happens in dry, desert-like conditions, but that's not always the case. What matters more is that just the hands were mummified, because you would expect if it happened because he was high up in the tree and the wind was constantly up there, you would expect that at some point there would be mummification to the whole body. Also, there was no insect activity, no kind of birds trying to feed on the body. The only thing they said they had taken was his feet. Thank you, Sky. There's the issue of Tanner's feet. They were gone, along with his shoes. Never recovered. Police said, although the fact the tree was in the middle of a town, coyotes probably took the shoes and the feet. It makes no sense to me. So you're expecting either coyotes jumped up into the tree where he was feet and feet up, about 15 foot up in the air. You expect that what, they just jumped up and got him? Or did you think his feet just dropped off? No, none of his body or his mummified fingers, they didn't drop off, his feet just dropped off nicely in his shoes. And coyotes were like, oh, Nike Air Max, I'll take them. Makes no sense. So we have to understand in this case is decomposition does not preserve evidence, it destroys it. Soft tissue breaks down. So things like we would expect to see in like bruising or hits, that's gone. Then we have organs deteriorate, they completely dry out. Bruising fades away. Injuries that might have been obvious earlier on disappear entirely. So it'd be very easy to keep a body maybe a couple of days before, put him up in the tree, because get people off your back. Then your family stop putting up all these posters and annoying the people that have done it. I read this off Tanner's aunt. She says, I don't believe this is the first murder in this town that has been hidden. This is not our family problem, this is an entire town's problem, and it's time this town stood up for people in this town and did something about it before other people's kids turn up missing and come up as dead and they rule it as suicide. Now, when you look back in the history of this town, there is quite a lot of these mysterious deaths where the police are either paid off or they just come up with a completely different narrative or they just don't investigate properly. So he was found in his underpants, his trousers, his top was gone, his shoes and feet were completely gone. Nope. So when the tree was found, it looked like this, Jade. From these bottom pictures here, I'll show you in a second, the tree looked like this when he was found. He was hung from that branch there. So we're in December, it's cold, the leaves have all gone away, we've gone through autumn, we're now like in winter, and the tree looks really scarce. And that's his body in the tree, blacked out, like on that bit. So it would have been very clear to see someone in that tree. I would even go as far as saying, tell me how a branch of that thickness held a body up for 6 months without eventually breaking. How the hell? How the hell? So I'll show you this map here. No, so that's where he went to Jeremiah's house, I'm sure. Swinging would weaken, but not only that. So people go, how would people get him up in that tree? A ladder. But how would Tanner get himself up in that tree and then hide the ladder? So people could get him there in the middle of the night, right? You could get him there in the middle of the night, you could get him up the tree, and then you could take away whatever you got him up the tree in. But Tanner couldn't put himself in the tree with the ladder and then remove the ladder. It was really high up. So it doesn't make any sense. Like, how else? What could he do? So the forensic pathologist in this case said he could only do what he could do with what was left of Tanner's body, because obviously the organs have already shriveled. There was none that looked at that tree, and apparently the investigation is so weak in this case. I wonder if they even looked properly. There would have been parts of him liquidized. His hands were mummified. There would have been little skin, so it'd be very hard to see. So the forensic pathologist just came back and said, look, can't see anything else, so we're just going to say it's suicide. But for Tanner's family, that doesn't answer everything or anything. They say that he was at the happiest he's ever been. He was about to get married within the next year. Hey, Errol. He was absolutely loving being a father. Now, in 2016, when we talked about Tanner being on felony probation following, he did a home invasion, okay, with his older brother, Tyler. He went into a house with weapons, and it was over a teenage dispute over a drug deal that escalated fast, and this was before he was a father. Him and his brother showed up with a gun and prevented people from leaving the house, okay? It's a serious crime. I'm not going to minimise that, because what he was on probation for 5 years was a serious crime, and this is why his mum said he did a lot of bad things. I wonder, hey Noble, I wonder if it was a response to that, a payback. I wonder if Jeremiah got him over to his house, there was more than one person waiting, they jumped Tanner, they hung him up from somewhere, eventually took his life. Look how many domestic violence cases we've seen in the last year that we've talked about, hey Teresa, where it's been put down to suicide. She hung herself. And every time there is something where actually someone's hung them from something, and it's actually been murder. Because we see all the time that these crimes are covered up. I wonder if this wasn't retribution. Now, after Tanner disappeared, his family began receiving messages suggesting that home invasion had set off a violent chain of retribution. According to his messages, it involved Tanner's friend Jeremiah and an upstairs neighbour named Stephanie Miller. Now, Stephanie Miller, her daughter, was one of the people that was at the house that night that Tanner had prevented from leaving. The theory the family keep hearing is like this. What happened to Tanner was retaliation. He wasn't meant to die. The plan was to beat him and scare him, but when he fought back, things escalated and he was killed. Now, these are rumours. The police don't seem interested in this. They've never even considered it to be a crime, and they have closed it down as he did it himself. Now, the Ward family did not accept the suicide ruling. They paid for a second autopsy, hoping it would give them clarity. It didn't. The independent autopsy also confirmed that the only injury they could find was the neck injury. There was nothing else left. Lisa has remained firm that her son was murdered and placed in that tree. She's adamant there were no signs that Tanner was suicidal. There was no note. He popped out for 30 minutes. He was coming right back. He didn't have the tendencies. He was also very happy with some of the recent life decisions he'd made. She also believes even if it wasn't himself that was feeling great, he wouldn't have done it to Sophia. Tanner was making plans. He was about to celebrate his first Father's Day with his daughter. And like in these other pictures, like nearly every picture is him with his daughter. He was engaged. He was working through his legal troubles. He was focused on being a dad. Now, obviously, we can never say. They don't seem to. We don't have any more about the T-shirt. Obviously, we cannot say that somebody's not suicidal. Sometimes it's the people that don't say anything that are. But I just don't see it here. I don't see how he put himself in a tree that no one saw him in for 6 months. His feet went missing, and his shoes. Now, surely, if let's be honest, right, there is no coyote in the middle of an American town with 5,000 people just walking up and down looking for a pair of sneakers. It just doesn't happen. Now, you'd think if he just hung himself in that tree within a couple of days, his shoes would have dropped off, maybe with his feet inside was due to the weight, and they would have then alerted to him being in the tree. We also know that there was a lot of people in that town who saw that tree daily. Even people saying to his mum, look, I was working 10 foot from that tree. Your son wasn't there. The tree where his body was found was 2 blocks from his home. You telling me this family that went up and down putting billboards up and posters didn't see him in a tree? The the family they've been looking for, the brother, the son, the dad of the baby. They didn't look in the tree. They hung posters on that tree at one point. His sister says within 3 weeks from going missing, she put a poster on that tree. She would have noticed if her brother's feet were just dangling above her head. I'm going to do a poll quickly, if I can find my poll, because I couldn't earlier. Where's it gone again? Oh, is it that one? No, it's not. Find it in a minute. There it is. Put a smiley face if you think this is suicide, and put a crying face if you think this should have been investigated as more, like at least open to other suggestions. If this was my son, I could just not be. I could just, if he really unalived himself, I could take that, but I would need all these questions answered. I would need someone to tell me exactly why, how it was missed, how I didn't see him, all of those things. Tanner Ward was 19. He was a son and a brother and a father and a fiance. Thank you, Karen. His baby girl will grow up without ever knowing her father or having any of these questions answered. His death has been closed. It is a suicide on paper, and so no one is investigating this case. There have been no arrest, no courtroom rulings, nothing. And his family feel like they can't move on. Tanner had reasons to live, and we don't have any reason to believe that he put himself in that situation. If he had, I believe he would have been found within the week of him doing it. I don't believe it would have taken 6 months to find his body. I don't believe some coyote just strolled through town, didn't make a noise and just stole his shoes and his feet. I don't believe that Jeremiah, what did he do? Go to Jeremiah's house and go, you take my t-shirt after you put 4 cigarette burns in it. I'm going to go kill myself in the tree. Don't look for me, bro. Like, who turned over the house? I think it's very likely that Jeremiah got him back to that house. Stephanie, Jeremiah and several others who had been impacted by the home invasion actually tried to tie him to a chair or something to torture him. And I believe that Tanner really fought back. At that point, something was probably put behind his neck and he was probably strangled. Then his body was kept somewhere for months before they were like, we've got to get rid of him. This family won't stop. They're putting posters up everywhere. They're never going to stop talking about us. We have to have this as a suicide. They probably had someone in law enforcement on their side from the get-go. Time has passed now. It was dismissed far too early on. And like I've said to you before, once you have a suicide verdict, especially in America, until you can get a coroner to overturn that and put open verdict or suspicious, no one can investigate that case. Not the FBI, not no one. It's shut. And it has to be the coroner that has to, first of all, overturn their kind of findings. This is what held the Ellen Greenberg case back so many times. It's really held her case back. Thank you for all the populars as well, guys. We're popular 58. We've only been live about 10 minutes, about an hour. 10 minutes is a bit of a stretch. To this day, Tanner's family want people to listen, but they don't know where else to go with it. They just do not believe. And I always listen to the families because I think, thank you, Stephanie. I always think families know their loved one. And I know that sometimes we can go, oh, it's denial, like that he's 19. They don't want to believe that he's done it himself. But sometimes it's just, they just need the answers. You need to explain to me how, why. Like his mum would have to know, how could he be just 2 blocks from my house and I didn't find him? That's a lot to put on a mother. A lot. I think in small town America sometimes things can happen, and people look the other way because of if you're dealing with a very small sheriff's department, 2, 3, 5 guys, they don't want the extra work of this. And this is where we are still now. And I searched today to find if there'd been any updates, and there has been nothing since 2018. Nothing at all. Nothing at all. And it's gone on for all this time now, and we will likely not see anything. I mean, he went missing on June the 7th of 2017. We're now 9 years after the fact, and it hasn't moved on. His mum does not believe it, Becca. His mum is like, nah. His mum thinks Jeremiah has all the answers, and she believes her son was beaten to death and placed in that tree, as does his sister, as does his ex-fiance. Obviously, he's gone, so she can't be his fiance anymore. She was so young. They believe this boy Jeremiah knows exactly what happened. I believe his dad knows as well. I wonder if, you know, that fire pit where the dogs alerted to Tanner's scent in the fire pit, I wonder if they hadn't burnt his feet or his shoes or something in that fire pit, and at some point, knowing the police were already invested and they'd already taken the shirt, whether they put the chicken bones there and removed whatever else they could find. And I wonder if that was something to do with that, because that fire pit was massive, and maybe they were going to chop up his body, because we know this happened before, chop up his body and burn him bit by bit, and maybe they'd only got to the feet and the shoes when all of a sudden his sister within 2 days is like, what the fuck is going on? Where's my brother? You've got his t-shirt on, come to the station and stuff, where they at that point had to freeze him somewhere and put him out of the way because they couldn't risk doing the rest, because they knew the sheriff, he was the only person looking into the case. Because I can't think of another reason. No. You're not calling my box. Nope. See you later. I don't understand that. I don't understand why police can't understand. Thanks, Victoria. Thank you for the heart meets, guys. I don't understand why police can't understand that these families, like of every victim, like to the police, it's like, oh, it's just one person, but to that family, it's everything, and they just want the answers. That's all they want. No, Natasha. They just want the answers. You'd also have to explain to the family, like, how, thank you, Andrew, thank you everyone for the populars and the gift goal as well. You would have to explain to a family, like, that he wasn't there the whole time, because how do you live with that? How do you live with that? For 6 months he was 2 blocks away and you didn't see him. It's impossible. Where are his fucking feet? Don't make any sense.